just going to go ahead and get started right away, and we're going to start dropping all of our ingredients in the bowl as we go along. So what I have in the bowl right now is 2 sticks of butter. That's a ½ pound softened. I'm also going to add, I have a 1.5 cups of brown sugar and a ½ cup of granulated sugar. We're going to go ahead and get the butter and the sugars creamed together. Alright, you want to beat this for about 3 minutes, and I'll show you why. Do you see how light it is now? It's not brown at all. It's a very creamy, it's almost a, a tan color beige, so that's where you want it exactly. Okay, now we're going to go for 2 eggs, one at a time. And make sure this is completely mixed in. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a teaspoon of vanilla, or thereabouts. If you like, you can mix the dry ingredients together by themselves ahead of time and just set them aside. But right now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add the salt and the baking soda. And then we're going to do 3½ cups of flour, all-purpose flour. This just briefly to get that flour kind of incorporated before we start really beating it together. The last thing we're going to add is 1 12-ounce bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And we're just going to briefly mix this on low speed until it's incorporated. And there we go. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our cookies on the baking sheet. And we're going to drop this not by 1 tablespoon, not by 2 tablespoons, but by 1/4 cup scoops. They're big, they're chewy, they're like the ones that you get when you go to the mall. Actually, I'm probably going to put 8 cookies per sheet. And I have my oven preheated to 325 degrees. You don't have to touch them past this point. Into the oven they go for 18 to 20 minutes. That's because of their size and their density. So we'll be back when it's time to bring these out. Alright, it has been just about 18 minutes, and these are ready to come out of the oven. When you can smell them, you need to check them, and I highly recommend that you have a timer set. Now, you can see that these are puffy, and they're just ever so slightly beginning to brown around the edges, and that's how you want them. You do not want to remove these from the baking sheet for 10 minutes. Because they're still cooking. The heat that's radiating from your baking sheet is going to continue to cook these until they're perfectly done, and they're still going to be chewy in the middle. They're going to have that moist denseness that you desire in a chocolate chip cookie, and they're going to be great. Alright, there you have it. A delicious tray of big, puffy, cakey, crispy, classic chocolate chip cookies. So delicious. This is what we're going to need for ingredients. We're going to need a ½ cup of molasses, 1½ cups of granulated sugar, 2 eggs, 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 sticks of butter or a cup of butter. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to also need 2½ teaspoons of baking soda and a ½ teaspoon of salt. And in here we have 2½ teaspoons of ground ginger, 1½ teaspoons of ground cloves, and 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon. And that's all there is to this cookie, and it's absolutely fantastic. And they are hands down the very best soft molasses cookie you will ever put in your mouth. Okay, I went ahead and I beat the softened butter just a little bit to get it going. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add our granulated sugar in here. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I have preheated my oven to 350 degrees. We're going to go ahead and get the butter and sugar started. Okay, now we're going to add the molasses. I'm just going to go ahead and pour it in here. Now, I actually sprayed my cup with some cooking oil before I started. We're going to beat this until it's light and fluffy. We're going to add our eggs one at a time. Okay, and over here, what I'm going to do with my flour is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the salt and the baking soda and all of the spices right in here. And I'm just going to take a whisk and I'm going to blend this in gently. Now, I'm going to turn the mixer on low and I'm going to spoon this flour mixture in just a spoonful at a time. Okay, you want to stop when you no longer see any evidence of flour or raw flour in that dough. So that's time to stop. Okay, now the best part about these cookies is they are a drop cookie and they don't need to be refrigerated for any length of time before we start to prepare them. So I got my oven going. It's at 350 degrees. We're going to scoop these, and this is a... Oh, what number? This is a number 40 scoop. Okay, so we're using a 1.5 inch diameter scoop, and this ends up being a 2 tablespoon scoop. After you scoop it, you're going to roll it in sugar, and then you're going to put it on a parchment or an ungreased cookie sheet. Okay, these go into a 350 degree oven for 11 minutes, and then when these are ready to come out, we'll come back and we'll show you what they look like. All right, these are ready to come out of the oven. Remember, 11 minutes and not a second longer. Okay. Beautiful. In goes the next batch. Don't forget to set your timer. Okay. Now, we're going to let these cool on the pan for just a few minutes before we remove them to a cooling rack. And while that first batch is in the oven, you can go ahead and get all of your cookies rolled out and put on pans if you have enough pans. And we're going to allow these to cool, and then we'll come back and I'm going to show you what the finished product looks like. There you have it. Really delicious and beautiful, soft. These are still warm. I'm just going to break one open for you. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're delicious. Make sure you store these in an airtight container so they retain their softness. And I promise you these aren't going to last long, and you're going to find yourself making these over and over again because these are a perfect lunchbox cookie, not just for Christmas, not just for special occasions. Your kids are going to love them, your husband's going to love them, and you're going to love them. Alright, we're just going to do like we did before when we made our chocolate chip cookies, and we're going to continue this method. In the bowl I have 2 sticks of butter, and that's a 1/2 pound or 1 cup of butter. And that is softened to room temperature. To that I'm going to add 1 cup of brown sugar and 1 cup of granulated sugar. And we're going to put the color on and let this cream. Okay. Our butter and sugar have creamed for approximately 3 minutes, and you will tell when it's ready because it has become very, very light and fluffy. It's not so dark like the brown sugar was. It's very light and it's very smooth and creamy. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 eggs, 1 at a time, leaving space in between each addition for each egg to become fully incorporated. Alright, next thing we're going to do is now if you are mixing by hand or have a different type of mixer, I highly recommend that you mix your baking powder, salt, cinnamon, nutmeg, and baking powder, salt, cinnamon, and nutmeg. That's all there's in there. In with your flour and then just set it aside so it's ready to go. Today I'm going to just drop it right in. There's a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And I'm just going to go ahead and give this a whirl. And then it's going to start to smell really yummy. Alright, now, don't worry about this because it'll get mixed in later. We're going to add our flour. We're going to use 2 cups of flour. I'm going to pulse this just to get it going. And that's mixed in. And then we're going to use 3 cups of old-fashioned oats. You don't want to use instant oats or quick oats or anything like that. You want to use old-fashioned, long-cooking oats. So, 3 cups of those. And then I have 1 cup each of dark raisins and golden raisins. You can use any combination that you like. You can also sub out the raisins for dried cherries, dried cranberries, chopped up dates, whatever you like. I like the flavor combination of the dark raisins and the light raisins. I think they both bring something to the party, and truth be told, golden raisins are my favorite. And just mix that until those raisins get combined in there. Now we're ready to move on, and I'll meet you back here in just a second. I'm going to clear the mixer away, and I'm going to grab my scoop, and we're going to start scooping the cookies. Alright, I am going to scoop out my cookie dough, and I'm going to put 8 cookies per sheet. This recipe is going to render approximately 2 dozen cookies. Now, the oatmeal cookie dough can tend to be a little sticky, so you want to have I have a little jelly jar here full of warm water just to dip my scoop in, and this is a 1/4 cup scoop. And these are going to make a nice size puffy cookie that's full of, you know, the raisins, and it's going to be full of cinnamon goodness, and you're going to love it, I promise. I have my oven preheated to 325 degrees. And we're just going to go ahead and pop this right on in there. These are going to bake for 18 to 20 minutes, or until the outer edges are lightly golden brown and the middles are puffy. And you're going to take them out when it's time to do that. I'll bring you back. These cookies have been in the oven for 20 minutes, and they are perfectly golden brown. And you'll see they look like they're not quite finished in the middle, but that's how you want them. You want these cookies to remain on the baking sheet. Just leave them there on top of your stove for about 10 minutes. This way they're going to continue cooking, and the baking sheet, the heat that's resonating from the sheet is going to continue to finish the cooking process on these cookies. So when those are cooled for 10 minutes, basically what I do is I put my next sheet in the oven just like this. And then when those come out, I pull these off and put them on a cooling rack to cool all the way, because they'll still be a little warm in the middle. You don't want to put these in a container or a bag or anything until they're completely room temperature. Once this first tray is cool, you know, your family's going to have at it. You probably won't need to put those away anyway. So, we'll be back when all the cookies are finished, and we'll show you what they look like all together. All of our cookies are done, they're cooled, and they're ready to enjoy. These are my personal favorite. I love an oatmeal cookie, and this is chock full of raisins, and they're just perfect. I love these cookies. The bottoms are just ever so slightly browned. They're crispy on the outside edge, they're dense, moist, and chewy in the middle, and they're perfect. You are going to love these. These are perfect for lunch boxes. These are perfect for the holidays. These are perfect to share or keep all for yourself. No judgment here. But anyway, I really do hope you give these a try, and I hope you love them. Alright, we're going to go over the ingredients for our really delicious snickerdoodle cookies. I mean, Christmas and snickerdoodles, they go together like Forrest and Jenny. Am I wrong? I don't think so. So what you're going to need to start off is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, and you're going to need 1 stick or 1/2 cup of butter softened, 1/2 cup of vegetable shortening, solid vegetable shortening, but don't use lard and don't double the butter and leave out the shortening. The shortening is key here to getting a crispy, crackly outside and a soft, chewy inside on your snickerdoodle. You're gonna need 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. This is non-negotiable. This also contributes to the texture of the cookie as well as the flavor. You're also going to need a teaspoon of baking soda, and a half a teaspoon of salt. I've used kosher salt here. If you use fine salt, you're going to use even less. A tablespoon of vanilla extract, 2 eggs, and then we're going to roll this in a combination of cinnamon sugar. So I have a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and a tablespoon of ground cinnamon. We're going to mix that up and we're going to set it aside. The first thing that has to happen is we're just going to go ahead and dump those right in there, and we'll just mix those up. Okay, today I'm going to be using a hand mixer and just a regular bowl because I know a lot of you might not have a big mixer, and you don't need a big mixer. So the first thing you want to do is beat your shortening and your butter together until they are light and fluffy. Our butter and our shortening are nice and fluffy and well blended, but I want to get my dry ingredients mixed together first. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine my flour, my baking soda, salt, and cream of tartar. And since I already have it in a mason jar, I'm just going to go ahead and give this a good shake. And that should be good. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my sugar in with my butter and shortening mixture, and we're going to cream this together until it's light and fluffy and a pale yellow color. Alright, now our sugar and butter and shortening is well creamed. We're going to go ahead and add the eggs one at a time, and we're going to stop and wait until each one is well incorporated before adding the second. Now add your vanilla extract and blend well. And now just take a rubber spatula and give this a good turn. Now you're going to go ahead and add your dry ingredients all at one time. You're going to blend this on low until you have a nice thick batter. And after you get done with the mixer, go ahead and come in here with your spatula and just dig deep. Make sure there are no pockets of dry ingredients and kind of give everything one little mush together. Now you're ready to scoop. I'm going to go ahead and scoop all of my dough at one time and put it on a baking sheet. Then we're going to move on to rolling and baking. So I'll be back after these are all scooped up. Alright, I went ahead and I got all of my dough scooped at one time. I find this to be really helpful because if you're busy, especially when it's Christmas cookie baking time, go ahead and scoop all your dough at one time. You can see I've gotten approximately 42 cookies out of this batch of dough. At this point, you can either just have these resting on the side, waiting to be baked, or you can freeze them. But today I'm going to be baking these off. If you want to just freeze these until they're solid, then you can pop them in a Ziploc bag, and then you can bake them off as desired, because there's nothing better than a fresh cookie. I'm going to bake these 8 to a tray because they do spread quite a bit. Lay them on your baking sheet. I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and these cookies are going to bake in my oven for exactly 12 minutes. Alright, these are ready to go in the oven, 350 degrees for 12 minutes in my oven. Make sure that you monitor yours the first time you make them so they come out perfect. I'll show you what these look like when they're all ready to be eaten. We baked our snickerdoodles for 12 minutes, and then I removed the pan from the oven and allowed the cookies to remain on the pan until the next pan was done. So 10-12 minutes, leave them on the pan. Then you take them and put them on a cooling rack and let them cool completely, and you're going to put them in an airtight container. These snickerdoodles are beautiful. They're crispy on the outside and they're soft on the inside, and that bubbly texture is coming from the baking soda and the cream of tartar, and it has that crispy, crackly outside full of cinnamon sugar goodness. I don't know about you, but I think there are certain cookies that everyone associates with Christmas time, and snickerdoodles are one of them for me, and I hope you give it a try.